again, to make this the greatest market in the world. Right? Thanks, Jeff. Great stuff. So finally, to close it all out, we've got a man who really doesn't need any introduction. The myth, the legend himself, the hero. He's modest, too. But Mr. Michael Comore is going to have our closing statements. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for sticking it out, everybody. Hope it's been informative. I don't know what else I can really get into. There's a, we're obviously in this kind of holding pattern. I was hoping that we get some progress here. We got a number of people that are encouraging the governor to take the action to at least let some pilot projects move forward without a university. But there's a number of different things that were mentioned in the comments. I wrote a bunch of notes on things I wanted to kind of discuss and just add to. I guess I'll leave a couple minutes if people want to ask some questions. But keeping in the context of this sea change of what's taken place and the mention of the crossing of the wires of the difference of marijuana and hemp, it really is cannot be emphasized enough that we have to keep these two things separate, despite at times it seems the legislation kind of trying to intertwine these. And this is already taking place, and I alluded to this earlier when I spoke for a couple minutes, but the governor in the last month or so had issued an executive order which removed the legislatively created board that was deciding the applications for medical marijuana licenses. And it was a good move. Everyone applauded it. It was could be considered radical, but it was something that needed to be done for that industry. In doing so, there was a lot of these other kind of unintended consequences, such as, definitions that were used that had previously been defined with in other legal terms that seemingly backstep some of the progress that had been made by the existing legislation. But what we can see from the amendments that were spoken about, 6330, 6331, is that it's already begun. The Medical Marijuana Licensing Facility Act, the amendments allow for CBD products to be sold through those places, and processing of the same for the licenses, and speaks to that. And if people were not aware, there was a recent bulletin that came out yesterday. I'm sorry I don't have it on to put up, but it looks like this is on the Lara website. I'm just going to read some of the things from it. They're talking about the industrial hemp and the plant cannabis. So they define it first: cannabis sativa L plant with delta-9 THC concentrate below 0.3%, includes product made from the industrial hemp plant. This is Lara's attempt to restate the definition, which I disagree they've done it accurately. The definition really is that all parts of the cannabis sativa L plant that are in anything above 3.3% is not. But the way they have it listed here is that they're kind of back to the cannabis sativa L plant as being illegal, and only if it can be shown that there's 0.3% or less does it make for it being not marijuana. I disagree with that, and as has been emphasized by both Jeff and myself, I think that it's unequivocal that this plant has been displaced from the Controlled Substances Act. But what the Lara goes on to discuss further is that growing industrial hemp will require a license from the MDART, and they say that they're in the process of developing a licensing program for growers to meet requirements of both state and federal laws to allow interstate commerce of the plants. Products derived from industrial hemp include CBD oil. According to them, they fall under several different categories. Any substance that will be added to food or drink or marketed as a dietary supplement must first be approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for that intended use. At this time, the FDA has not approved CBD for use in food or drink or as a dietary supplement. Therefore, it's currently illegal to add CBD into food products or drinks or sell it as a dietary supplement. Again, this is their position, their interpretation, which is not really valid, I would say. I don't want to knock it. I mean, these are the ones that, this is the agency well, this is why, as we said, Lara should not be issuing licenses. I guess is a better way to say it. Because to say that CBD is illegal is a little bit of a stretch. I don't know how it becomes illegal when it's a chemical that's not considered a controlled substance. It's like saying blueberry juice is illegal or something like that. I don't know. But they go on to discuss generally regulated as safe, or GRAS, which is through the MDARD, is a list of those substances that the FDA considers safe to add to food. Hulled hemp seeds, hemp seed protein, and hemp seed oil are considered generally regarded as safe as of 12/20/2018. CBD is currently not considered generally regulated as safe as of 3/29/2019. That means yesterday. In Michigan, any food product falls under the Michigan food law and the licensing requirements within the law. So, I mean, this is absurd. I mean, I'm surprised Gus isn't yelling at me for just to announce that. No, I mean, we've been making the case. This is so wrong, and you can see the direction it's going. There's the battle over the CBD is right here. You can see it. So who's going to control it? How much? Who's going to be paying for it? It's, I mean, the idea that they're going to criminalize it for it is, and make all the much ado about nothing when it is simply a plant like, or better categorized as a coffee, right? Any product derived from industrial hemp with a THC concentrate above 3% is classified as marijuana and regulated under the laws that apply to those products through the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. So there's a lot of work to do still. I think this is an example of the kind of direction that this thing is going to follow. They're going to let the rule makers at Lara kind of try to command this for licensing, and we have to prevent that and stop that. We do have some other guidance of what this is going to look like from the amendments of 2018 to what was the original 2014 pilot project, and within that regulation scheme, you can see all of the direction of similar types of requirements for the applicants and requirements for the inspections and lack of notice if there's a violation or whatnot. One of the things that was mentioned, we've been talking about testing, and testing playing a big role in this, and I think that cannot be understated when the whole definition of the plant itself is based upon some measurement from a tester, at some point in the growing of this plant. And I think a lot of work needs and should be done there. I mean, what part of the plant are we going to be testing? Does all parts of the plant get destroyed? Is there a chance to fix it? Is there alternatives to destroying right away? And, obviously these are some other areas that need to be discussed. And really, at the end of the day, the push and overall theme should be that they're going to treat this plant like they would any other agricultural crop and use the same standards that are used for agricultural crop and in that industry. But this is the state of affairs, I guess. It's not that encouraging. I know if there's one thing that is the safe answer for most of this is that people need to be patient in terms of their desire to want to engage now. There are obviously limitations, and the question that you had asked in particular about what are the consequences? What am I looking at? What are my liabilities? Are all great questions. I mean, as I said, people, it's not criminal. I mean, yes, all these things could happen. You could have a sheriff or a police, and they create an entire circumstance that they just out of the know and act first, and you're fighting it out in court, which nobody wants to have happen. But assuming that the knowledge was there and you were doing what you're doing and it was what it was and they knew about it, there was no question about it, you're looking at regulatory fines, really, but the downside of it, as I've mentioned, and the reason why people should consider at least being patient, is that if there is some kind of mark on your permanent record, I mean, that's what we're talking about. It's like really something that's silly, and you go to apply later on for something that you plan to engage in and got years and years of, business growth and families that are going to live off of this idea and whatnot. Why risk it at this point and create that kind of concern? And well, you know, and I mean, it's hard to say that because I know there's an entrepreneurial spirit that wants to get out in front of it, and I can tell you there's a lot of people that are probably angry at me for my legal advice that I gave of not opening a dispensary in Detroit. You know, I mean, you know, this is a thing that people have made. But again, I'm looking at it from a perspective of in a framework of what we know is going to happen, and you know, working within it, expecting it to work, and you know, taking advantage of the opportunity in that regard. So, you know, despite the minimal liability, I think it's worthwhile to kind of to wait at this point. Although I would say that if there is some planting that takes place this year, you know, we as I said, the federal regulations are being worked out according to the administration. I know, you know, they've asked and are seeking input from the community at different times. There's different places you can find on the internet there, you know, to give input and information. But I think all the issues that we're talking about here today are really at the core of this, the next battles moving forward. But it's good that Michigan's opted in, right? I mean, we could be a state that didn't have a hemp farming bill and then, you know, be at that stage. So there's a lot of good to happen at the end of the day. And but certainly diligence and holding our legislators accountable, and organizing and making sure that the community here, the farmers, the manufacturers, processors are all at the table when these events are taking place and being written. And I think we've highlighted all the things that we have to be aware of, and I think I'll leave it there and take some questions if anyone wants to have any, if they haven't all been answered before. Seeing, okay, sure.
So what would you suggest as talking points if we go to our state reps or want to further education of them or questioning the current state of the laws? What would you suggest there?
Well, number one is this is hemp, it's not marijuana. It's an industrial crop. It's legal federally, banking, it's not an issue. We transport it throughout the states, representatives. So that's number one. We're not talking about marijuana. Not that I'm knocking marijuana, but and with that being said, there's a lot of farmers that want to grow. We want to get going. We want to be able to begin the process, and unless you create regulations that make it workable for the community, it's not going to happen. The purpose of this law was to bring back farming, to regenerate farmers, to create a renaissance of business, to be able to compete with the $880 million industry that exists in the United States already. $880 million transferred between individuals buying hemp products. The United States has been the #1 importer of hemp. #1. Canada, China, importing all their hemp to us. That should end. This is a crop that farmers could be selling to that $880 million industry. That's an easy win, easy. That's just the beginning of crops, of products that we know about and that we use now, that are aware in our marketplace, that we're familiar with. It doesn't include the thousands of other products that have yet to be finalized and created. You know, hempcrete isn't even in the marketplace for commercial or residential building yet. You know, it's fireproof material. You know, you can build a house and probably not have fire insurance. Now, it's like a transition of the coal industry. You know, it's got to be, you don't want to destroy the coal miners and whatnot, but there's other forms of kind of that, those resources that we need to transition out of, and planting the seeds, pun intended, is some of the things we have to do. But it's really the drive of jobs and farming and manufacturing and bringing people back to work. Michigan made is always a good thing to throw in there. They like to hear that. So those are the talking points, I think. I don't know. And anyone that wants to add to that, please do. But I think that's the area. Yes, sir.
Well, I've just done a quick study. 4% of global oil production goes into plastics.
Oh, yeah. Plastics is.
4% goes into energy to produce plastics. So 8% of all the oil that's produced makes plastics. Right now, 300 million, that's 300 million tons a year. 80 million tons of that goes into our oceans. bioplastics, hemp-based bioplastic is right now 5% of the market. By 2030, it's going to be upwards of 40% of the market. That's predictions. The advantage, hemp absorbs CO2, greenhouse gas, negative. It's not a neutral, negative. No CO2 is expended in producing hemp. It's a consuming CO2. Advantage to us. Then we look at besides being carbon negative, industrial hemp is 60 to 70% cellulose. Cotton is 75%. This is just as good as cotton as making plastics. Better. And right now, Kentucky farmers are making $16 million a year growing it. So I would just say, if you're talking to the state folks, made in Michigan, we're going to take out a significant portion of the greenhouse gas, the green industry, right here in Michigan.
Absolutely. Environment. So, you know, I mean, you could feed a starving nation with the plant also, right? I mean,
That's right.
you just got to get a long extension cord to cut it. Anyway, so any other questions or comments before we close it down till the next time we meet again? There's a song about that somewhere. Jeff may sing. If I can get it back up here.
When and where are we meeting again? Any clue?
No, but they're going to call you and you're going to have that answer for them. Joel, is that right? Joel, if anyone's questions, we're meeting, call Joel. We will. No, we will announce and certainly get that out, and probably within a month-ish, too. All right.
Is this the same group putting out the thing in Mount Pleasant?
No. It's a different group, but I'm going to be there, and and My Compassion is here, and Todd Levitt, who is sponsoring this, is also one of the people that's going to be there. That's a 2-day event at the casino. One-day event.
420.
On 420 is a day. I can't forget that. Soaring Eagle Resort, and there are flyers there, and we'll have hopefully some updates and whatnot. Hopefully, it will have everything figured out by then, and all the answers that people have, all the questions people have today will be answered then. That's a good pitch. Right? We're going to show just a little teaser.
All of them.
All right, very good. Thank you, everyone, for coming.